They locked me in the closet at my mother-in-law's request, filmed it, and posted it on TikTok, but I called the police, and they were shocked. My controlling mother-in-law persuaded her 9-year-old grandson to lock me in a dark closet as a joke. When my husband wouldn't intervene, I ended up calling the police. My relationship with my husband's family has always been strained, particularly with his mother. Here's some background. My husband Michael is one of 3 siblings. Despite having an older sister, he was always the favorite. My mother-in-law, Barbara, exhibits classic narcissistic behavior. She often demanded gifts on Michael's and his sister's birthdays, claiming they owed everything to her. Michael shared with me countless stories of how, during his childhood, his mother would turn every one of his achievements into her own. When I first began dating Michael and visiting his home, Barbara was exceptionally kind, but her attitude deteriorated as our relationship became more serious. Over the years, her antics grew worse, hitting a peak when we decided to marry 5 years ago. Barbara's interference made wedding planning a nightmare. Luckily, Michael and I had decided to finance everything ourselves to keep family members from meddling. When Barbara attempted to change our wedding venue and layout, I politely declined. She complained to Michael, who tried to negotiate with me, but I stood my ground. For our wedding, I wanted a laid-back, fun, non-religious ceremony with a varied bridal party and a loose color scheme. My only request for Barbara and my bridesmaids was to choose dresses within the color palette and show me before purchasing. My mother and the bridesmaids showed me their selections, and I approved them all. Barbara, however, never showed me any options despite my repeated requests leading up to the wedding. On the wedding day, Barbara arrived in an off-white dress, shocking everyone. It was a mid-length dress with a sheer chiffon layer and a bolero. She looked smug as she saw my reaction. I broke down in tears, and Michael immediately asked her to either change or leave. Her husband refused to take her back, causing an argument. To keep the peace, I allowed Barbara to stay in her inappropriate dress. It was mortifying as guests noticed and commented on her attire. I ignored her throughout the event, not saying a word. Michael, though understanding my frustration, urged me to let it go, insisting I was the bride no matter who wore white. This deeply upset me as he failed to see the significance of his mother's choice. I decided to forgive her, even though she never apologized. Her narcissism didn't stop there. When we were trying to conceive, it was a difficult time. After suffering a miscarriage, I was understandably anxious when I became pregnant again. Michael was thrilled and supportive, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books, and setting up a nursery. 3 months later, we felt ready to share the joyous news. After ensuring we had safely passed the critical first trimester, we decided it was time to share our exciting news with our family. We arranged a luncheon and invited our parents, close relatives, and friends. They arrived, expecting a regular gathering, but their faces lit up with surprise and delight when they noticed my slightly rounded belly. My mother was moved to tears upon seeing me and immediately realized I was expecting. She completely understood our need for secrecy and was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. Her joy was palpable as she expressed her happiness and excitement. In stark contrast, Jake's mother, Linda, reacted with anger and disappointment. She felt excluded and accused me of deliberately keeping her in the dark. Despite my attempts to explain our cautious approach, she remained upset and refused to speak with me for the rest of the day. Her disapproval cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous family celebration. Throughout the evening, Linda ignored me and showed blatant disrespect not only towards me, but also towards my mother, who had always been kind to her. Linda remained engrossed in her phone, clearly upset and making no effort to participate in the family gathering. She openly voiced her frustration, feeling she had missed out on precious moments with her unborn grandchild. As tensions rose, I needed a moment to compose myself and stepped outside. My mother noticed my distress and came to comfort me until I felt ready to rejoin the gathering. As the evening drew to a close, Linda made a point of saying goodbye to me last, barely acknowledging my presence throughout the day. When Jake walked his parents to their car, a heated argument ensued, which I could hear from the foyer. Linda seized the moment to further express her grievances about me, escalating the already tense situation. Fortunately, all our other guests had left by then, leaving just my parents, Jake, and his parents. Linda angrily told Jake she couldn't believe I had kept the pregnancy from her, accusing me of not valuing family. Jake calmly explained that we had both decided to wait until we were sure everything was fine before sharing the news. Linda, however, was not satisfied and began yelling. The conversation went as follows, Linda. "This is our grandchild. I deserve to know from the beginning. As your mother, you should have called me immediately. Jake, Mom, we just wanted to be cautious before sharing the news." "Linda, cautious? I am your mother. You should have trusted me. This is all her fault. She controls everything. Stand up for yourself, Jake." Jake looked embarrassed and miserable as his mother continued to berate him. Tears streamed down my face, the harshness of her words leaving me hurt and bewildered. I wanted to step in, but my mother advised me to stay quiet, knowing Linda was just looking for a fight. I heeded her advice, not wanting to give Linda the satisfaction of engaging in a confrontation. Linda continued to rant, insisting Jake should take control and not let me dictate our lives. Linda demanded that Michael open his eyes and realize that I was controlling everything, and as his mother, she should have been the first to know if her son was having a child. Eventually, her husband Tom urged her to calm down and drove her away. This wasn't the last time she acted out. Her list of outrageous and entitled behavior is endless. Here are a few instances. She tried to teach our baby to call her mom instead of grandma, which infuriated me. She would beg to babysit our child and then make sure everyone knew how much we depended on her. When I had health issues after pregnancy, she told me I needed to be a better mother and to get over myself. Due to these incidents and many others, my relationship with Linda has never been great, but I continued to tolerate her for Michael's sake. Recently, Linda and Tom moved into a new house and kept inviting us to check it out. We were busy, so we couldn't go immediately. Michael wanted me to go alone with our child, Emily, but I was hesitant. He urged me to go so that his mother would stop calling him to check out the new place. Begrudgingly, I agreed to visit during the weekend. Emily had a friend's birthday party that weekend, so I dropped her off and asked my mother to pick her up since Emily loves spending time with her grandparents. It was a sunny Friday afternoon when I went to see my in-laws' new place. The property was expansive, and it seemed like Tom had spent a lot on it for his retirement. The house was enormous with a blend of modern and classic styles. The yard was lovely with plenty of greenery and fragrant flowers. When I arrived and rang the doorbell, Linda answered. Initially, she looked excited, but her expression changed when she saw it was just me. She asked where Michael and Emily were. I explained that Michael had an appointment and Emily had a friend's birthday party. This upset her, and she started complaining about how selfish we were for not finding time to visit her. I awkwardly changed the topic by expressing my interest in seeing the new house. She smiled sadly, but invited me inside. The interior was just as impressive, with high ceilings and tasteful decor. My sister-in-law, Karen, and her 9-year-old son, Jack, were also there. I greeted them warmly, but Karen, much like her mother, never seemed to like me. Whether it was a personal issue or just to please her mom, she rarely engaged with me. Linda informed me that Tom was out with friends, so she had invited Karen and Jack over for some quality time. I nodded politely and tried to strike up a conversation with Jack about school. While discussing school, Linda abruptly changed the topic to her recent clothing purchases, mentioning she wanted my advice on her new wardrobe. This surprised me, as she had never sought my opinion before. Hiding my surprise, I responded politely, offering to help. Despite our history, I decided to see this as a positive opportunity to bond over something simple like fashion. Linda seemed pleased and led me to what she proudly called her pride and joy, a newly built walk-in closet. As we approached the impressive display of clothes, shoes, and accessories, I couldn't help but admire the lavish collection she had amassed. While I was appreciating the outfits, Linda eagerly began showing me different pieces, asking for my opinion on colors, styles, and accessories. It was a bit surreal given our rocky history, but I tried my best to be helpful and provide thoughtful suggestions. Linda then encouraged me to look through her closet and said she would be right back. I nodded and was checking out her new clothes when I heard the pattering of feet running behind me. Before I could even look back, with mischievous laughter, Karen's son Jake gave me a push, causing me to stumble into the closet and swiftly locked the door behind me. I fell face first into the closet, my head and teeth hurting from the impact. At first, I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. The initial shock gave way to a sense of confinement and panic as I realized that Jake had turned off the light switch, which was outside the closet door, and had locked me in. I was enveloped in darkness and felt claustrophobic. Shocked and terrified, I began banging on the closet door, desperately calling out to Linda and Karen for help. However, my pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears, or perhaps they were conveniently ignoring my distress. I fumbled for my phone, hastily switching on its flashlight. Anxiety crept in as I noticed my dwindling battery, making me worry that my phone might die before I could escape the confined closet. You see, I've had an irrational fear of darkness ever since I was a child. I had locked myself by mistake in my grandmother's closet while playing hide-and-seek, and my grandmother, who was hard of hearing due to her age, had taken an agonizing hour to finally find me stuck in the closet, crying and screaming. The sheer terror of that moment lingered, leaving me with an irrational fear that surfaced whenever I found myself enveloped in darkness. I continuously attempted to reach out to Linda and Karen for assistance. Unfortunately, my calls went unanswered, and a growing sense of isolation enveloped me. I was confused as to why they wouldn't pick up my calls, even though I could hear them laughing loudly downstairs. In a last-ditch effort, I decided to dial Michael's number in desperation. After a few rings, he casually answered. With desperation in my voice, I explained the dire situation. "Michael, thank goodness you picked up. Something terrible has happened, and I need your help," I said. Michael, seemingly unfazed, inquired about what was going on. I proceeded to recount the incident. "Your nephew just pushed me and locked me inside the closet at your mom's place. He has switched off the lights. I have been banging on the door, but no one has come to rescue me. You know how terrified I am of dark spaces." Michael, less sympathetic, retorted, "Are you seriously calling me in the middle of my work for this? This isn't even an emergency. Just call my mother, who is inside the house, instead of calling me." Frustrated, I replied that I did call his mother and his sister several times, but they were not picking up. I explained how I didn't have a lot of charge on my phone to begin with, and switching on my phone's flashlight was also draining my battery more. I begged him to come over and help me, as he knew how scared I was of the darkness. I had talked to him at length about this. Michael, unmoved by what I had just told him, stated, "Locked in a closet? Seriously? No, I can't come over as I'm busy right now, so find someone else to help you." To my dismay, he nonchalantly dismissed my continued plea for help and cut the call short. I was stunned by his reaction. The growing panic within me pushed me to... I continued banging on the closet door, desperately calling out for Linda and Karen, but their phones remained stubbornly silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I decided to call my father-in-law, Tom, as he was now the only person left who I could contact. I knew he had been out with friends, but I had no one else to turn to. The phone rang, and I held my breath, hoping he would answer. He picked up, and I nervously explained the situation, revealing that Jake had locked me in the closet, and that despite my attempts to reach out to others, no one was responding. He immediately assured me that he would make his way back home as quickly as possible, shocked that Linda and Karen hadn't heard me all this time. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside. I could recognize Tom yelling something, and he seemed to be directing someone to unlock the closet door. My anxiety began to subside as I realized help was finally on its way. The door creaked open, and I squinted against the sudden light. Linda and Tom stood there, wearing a mix of concern and frustration on their faces. I came out of the closet, a bit disoriented but grateful for the release from that confined space. Tom asked Linda why I was locked in her closet, and she feigned innocence. I recounted the incident to everyone, detailing how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked it. However, both Linda and Karen scoffed at my words, dismissing them entirely. They insisted that Jake would never do something like that. Frustrated and angry, I questioned why they hadn't come to check on me or respond to my banging on the door. Their excuse was that they were in the backyard where Linda was showing Karen and Jake her new rose garden. Jake was peeking from the door, so I directed my anger at him and started to question him about why he would lock me inside. But Karen interrupted me, claiming that her son would never do such a thing and that I must have closed the door myself and the key must have fallen out. Their blatant lies left me beside myself with frustration and disbelief, as it still didn't explain how the lights got turned off. Tom tried to calm me down, but I knew that regardless of what I said, Linda and Karen would continue to defend each other. Defeated and hurt, I returned home. I called my mother on my way, apologizing that I couldn't come to pick Emily up for the night and that she might have to stay over at their place. I was trembling with shock, and my mother knew something was wrong, but I did not have the energy to tell her at the moment what had just happened. I reached home and waited for my husband to return so I could confront him about what his family had done to me. However, to my disbelief, when I recounted the incident to him during dinner, he berated me for overreacting and accused me of being childish. He insisted that this was a ridiculous accusation to make about his family. He refused to believe that his nephew could have locked me inside the closet and that his mother and sister had knowingly refused to help me. He continued to justify his actions, saying that he wasn't at my beck and call, so I needed to be more understanding. With everyone gaslighting me, I started to doubt myself. In an attempt to avoid further conflict, I chose not to argue with him any further. I retreated to bed, enveloped by profound loneliness, struggling to understand what had happened. The weight of the incident pressed heavily on my chest, and the feeling of being dismissed and misunderstood by my husband lingered. I knew that what had happened to me wasn't merely a prank. It was intentional, calculated, and deeply humiliating. Everyone pretty much knew that I was afraid of the dark. The following day, while I was at home grappling with the emotional aftermath of the previous day's ordeal, I received a TikTok link from my cousin. She asked if the video featured me. Opening the link, I was horrified to see that my nephew Jake had recorded the entire incident and shamelessly posted it for his followers on TikTok. He was clearly telling his followers how he wanted to prank me and that locking me inside the dark closet was the perfect plan. He hid the camera in a corner and then ran to push me inside. My blood boiled in anger, seeing his laughter. Infuriated, I shared the video in our family chat, demanding that everyone now owed me an apology since I had proof. I also wrote to Karen, insisting that she get Jake to delete the video immediately. Instead of acknowledging the severity of the situation, Linda brushed it off and said that it was really funny to watch. She claimed she hadn't seen anything more hilarious and excused it by saying, "Boys will be boys." Karen joined in, insisting that I shouldn't be bothered by the video and should just let it go, arguing that Jake had played a harmless prank on me. I warned them that if Jake didn't remove the video, I would take legal action. Linda replied, saying I was overreacting and needed to chill out and learn to be a part of the family. Fed up with their lack of empathy, I decided to take matters into my own hands and teach them all a lesson. I called the cops immediately and provided them with the evidence of the incident. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, they agreed to visit Karen to question her about why her 9-year-old child had a TikTok account and was posting such prank videos. Later, Karen called me angrily, asking if I seriously had the audacity to file a complaint against her. I told her that I had, and that I was willing to take this to court. She started yelling at me some more, but I quickly told her that I was recording the conversation and would be happy to give it to my lawyer. She quickly shut up after that. Am I wrong for teaching my husband's family a lesson for locking me inside the closet for over an hour? Update 1. In just a few hours, I have received thousands of comments, and I am glad to see that a majority of you understand why I decided to involve the police. I have been receiving multiple calls from my in-laws who are asking me to withdraw my statement to the police. No official case has been filed yet, as my nephew is still a child, so the police are investigating to assess and determine the appropriate course of action. My husband, who had no idea about this, erupted when he came back from work. He had tried calling me during the day, but I'd been busy with the police. When he was back, I knew we were going to have this conversation. Michael is convinced that what I have done has totally destroyed the family and is saying that I shouldn't be so childish as to overreact over such harmless things. He continues to believe that Jake is just a child and shouldn't be punished for this. I have talked with my parents and my sister about this. My family knows about my phobia of dark spaces, and they are shocked that no one came to rescue me, and more importantly, that my husband isn't advocating for me. My dad had a strong word with Michael, telling him that if I had called him for help while stuck in the dark closet, then it should have been his responsibility to either come to help me or immediately call his parents to get me out. The fact that he didn't do either of these things doesn't sit right with me or my family. Everyone's comments made me realize that my husband and his family's dismissive attitude has been going on for a long time, and I have been blind to it. I will continue to update you when there are any further developments. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a major development. My sister-in-law's husband, Victor, who was out of town, recently returned and found out about what had happened between me and Jake. He completely lost it and demanded that my nephew immediately take down the video and apologize to me personally. When Karen tried to defend her son's actions, Victor threatened to kick Jake out if he ever disrespected others like that again. This was all relayed to me by Victor when he visited me. I agreed to meet up in the hopes of getting to the bottom of this incident. Victor came to our place with Jake, who looked remorseful, as if he had been scolded the entire time. Victor looked at him sternly as Jake immediately started to apologize to me as soon as we sat down to talk. He then started explaining that, although he did push me into the closet, it wasn't entirely his fault. I looked at him curiously, and so did Victor. Jake went on to reveal that he would talk to Linda about his TikTok account and forward her several prank videos that his friends played on others. Linda began suggesting it would be a good idea to try it on someone in real life. Jake told her he didn't think it was a good idea to try it on family members, but Linda urged him, saying that because I wasn't technically his family since I was just married to Michael, it meant he could definitely try those pranks on me and not feel guilty about it. I was shocked to hear this. Victor asked Jake if he was lying and trying to dodge responsibility, as this was a huge accusation to make. Jake started weeping, telling us that we could check his phone where he and Linda had indeed discussed this. He showed us the chats, and I was horrified and disgusted. For someone her age to incite a child to engage in such actions simply because she disliked me was truly appalling. Having heard enough, I promptly saved those screenshots to my phone and emphatically advised Jake against following her suggestions, emphasizing that it was wrong. Jake nodded solemnly. Victor, equally taken aback, expressed his dismay, stating how sickening it was and making him reconsider allowing his child to be around Linda. Understandingly, I nodded as he continued expressing regret for not being present to prevent Jake's actions that day. He urged me not to go through with the case and to retract my statement with the police since Jake had spoken the truth. Victor was clearly afraid of the impact this would have on his child's life. I assured them that I would discuss the matter with my lawyer and the police on the condition that Jake never uploaded the video again or retained a copy of it. Jake assured me that he had indeed deleted the video and had no copy of it remaining. Since this conversation with Victor and Jake, I have started questioning my entire relationship with Linda. It's pretty clear now that she was behind the attack and encouraged a child to do her dirty work so she could get away with it. I can't allow myself to be around her ever again, as I don't know what else she might do to me if she already dislikes me this much. Update 3. Hello, everyone. It's been 6 months since my last update. I have moved out of my husband's place and am currently staying with my parents. As updated previously, my manipulative mother-in-law was behind everything. When I confronted her about it, she refused to accept her mistakes. Even after I showed Linda the screenshots, she tried to accuse Jake of manipulating them and photoshopping the evidence. Her lies quickly fell apart once I threatened legal action if she didn't admit her mistakes. She begrudgingly admitted that she had pre-planned this with Jake, and that when she saw I had come alone to visit her, she thought it would be the perfect time to play the prank on me. She continued to say how Karen was in on it too, and that they had enjoyed hearing my screams for help. She begged me not to pursue this further, promising never to do it again. Fortunately for me, I had recorded our entire conversation. I simply ended the call with Linda and forwarded the voice recording to our group chat so that everyone could hear her admission. I sent a text to Karen saying that I had never expected her to stoop so low and that I hoped her son would turn out to be a better human being than she was. As for my husband, our relationship deteriorated every day. Even with the screenshots and voice recording of his own mother admitting her mistake, he never once apologized to me for what his family had put me through. Seeing my family rallying behind me made me realize that I was not overreacting and that what happened to me was a big deal. Although I decided not to take any legal action, I couldn't forgive or forget what the family had done to me. There was no going back after this, and with my husband continuing to support them, there was nothing left for me to fight for. I tried to save my marriage, But when your own partner supports his mother's malicious actions, regardless of your feelings, you start to realize that you deserve better. I moved out so that we could eventually start our divorce proceedings. He wasn't even remotely surprised and didn't fight me when I announced I wanted a divorce. I won't lie, this has been extremely hard. I genuinely loved my husband and thought I would grow old with him. But these last few months have been eye-opening, and I deserve to put myself first.